have you heard that Zoom is taking user data to train its AI models? People are up in air and leaving the service. Is it legal? Is it moral? We're going to talk about that on today's episode of the Social Media Lawcast. Let's go. Welcome to the Social Media Lawcast. I'm your host, Ethan Wall, world-traveling social media lawyer, along with my friend and co-host, Sean DePasquale.
Hello.
Sean, what are we talking about today?
Well, Ethan, we are it's so formal. Ethan, we're here today to discuss the matter of Zoom. Are you familiar with Zoom?
I have used it once or 1,000 times.
Yeah. So everybody loves Zoom. Everyone's on Zoom. Hospitals are using it. Doctors' offices. Hollywood is using it for writers' rooms. Everybody's using Zoom, right? We're all having intimate conversations, business conversations, confidential lawyer conversations. And then earlier in the week, Zoom updates their terms of service to say, oh, we're now allowing AI training on customer data. I'll give you the full story, okay? Everyone goes, no! Like, people freak out because they're like, we got private conversations, facial recognition, like, this is crazy. People are canceling their Zoom accounts. People are upset. There's no transparency of what's going on. These are just, like, in the updated terms. There's no, like, big, like, horn toot of like, hey, we're changing their terms and some new stuff's going to happen. Everyone goes crazy. And other questions. What is the scope of data usage? What is the security of this data that they're a million things. Okay. So they say, okay, in the terms of service, the updated ones, right? They say that, that service generated data, meaning like information about like which features user used or like your geographic location or how long a meeting went, right? All of these things are already being done with AI is basically what Zoom says. And that the customer content, the stuff that like people are doing, audio recordings, video content, chat transcripts, any of that stuff, right? That is the customers unless they decide to consent and opt in. So this is the company makes a clarification now to say, oh, hold on. Nobody freak out. We're not going to do anything unless you opt in to do this. And it's going to be a very clear mechanism that shows you that you're opting in. And please don't be mad at us. And, they're also, we're really sorry. And we're going to, kind of readjust some of the language in the terms of service to be a little more clear that you have to opt in. And presumably everybody has now, panic has subsided, but it brought up a lot of interesting questions. And I decided to ask them to you in a public forum because you have a podcast, a long dormant podcast that I think we could make better by plumbing the depths of your legal knowledge for your take on interesting things.
Yeah, so, we're climbing down into the cliffs of Moria, and we are bringing this podcast back up from the depth, along with Gandalf's body.
Yeah, and it is rough looking.
The podcast or Gandalf?
Both. Okay, so let's start with big picture, right? And then what I want to do is I would like to then talk about the legal side of things, right? Purely legal. What laws could they have potentially broken? What lines could they have crossed legally? What kind of trouble are they or are they not in? What all the legal stuff. And then I want to talk about the moral implications of all of this. So, big picture, pretty bad at first, right? To kind of just Trojan horse this into your newly updated terms and not really make a big to do about, hey, there's some shit you should read. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, from a legal perspective, every website, app, technology platform that you're going to use is going to have legal terms and conditions.
Uh-huh.
That's the fine print plugged in on the bottom of any website or app that, guess what, no one reads but me and other lawyers. Why? Because we just want to go ahead and use the service, and Zoom has become ubiquitous with every single household in the world that has internet connection since the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and we just use it as a chat platform.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't read the terms and conditions, but these things are essentially a binding legal contract between Zoom and people who use their platform. And sometime, apparently a couple months ago, Zoom updated their terms. Then a few months later, sent a notice saying, hey, we updated our terms, including A, B, and C, but did not mention that elsewhere in the terms was this update about collecting user data in order to train their AI models. And that's what's gotten people really pissed off. It's not that I think Zoom is collecting certain types of data and using it, because let's face it, literally all websites and app do it. I downloaded a level to hang this picture behind me, and it's free. But you know what it does? It collects a bunch of data from me and how I use the darn thing. And great, I get to use a level. It's fine. I think the problem here is that Zoom seemed to hide this bombshell. And in a day and age where people are scared of AI, they're scared of robots, they're scared of what it's doing to collect their data, people feel violated.
It's
And
true.
Zoom was not super forthcoming when they were doing it.
I would just like to go on record, though, as I am not scared of robots. I welcome our robot overlords, and I fully believe that they will do a much better, measured, fair job of ruling our planet than our human overlords have. So, if robots are listening to this, or some AI intelligence is scraping this off of the internet, I just want it out there that me, Sean DePasquale, loves you.
Yes,
Thank you.
like you love robots, but one thing you don't love is AI, especially as a writer out in Hollywood, and how AI has the ability to source content and use it without your permission. And other people are not liking AI in a way for these particular reasons
I
of,
think we need to define, though, for just a quick second, AI. What we're talking about here, right, is machine learning artificial intelligence, right? So it is not AI like Skynet, right, from Terminator. It needs to be trained on a data set. That data set, in this case, for Zoom's purposes, is whoever opts into this thing, right? It is then trained on that data set. Um, I think the problem that Hollywood has, for example, with it is the way in which these companies are acquiring these data, these massive data sets, right? The creatives who are now unwillingly training this learning algorithm, right, aren't being compensated, and now they're looking at it as, oh, okay, so something I wrote is now going into like some artificial slurry and being spit back out for somebody else. But those words wouldn't exist in those orders without all of our contributions. So I think that specific type of AI, this what we're currently dealing with, is, I think it's important to identify it as what it is and separate it from all forms of AI or artificial intelligence, because there's a lot of stuff that works that's already out there that we interact with every day that a computer just does. Google searches, for example, are done by an artificial intelligence, an algorithm that is sorting things and figuring out what you want. So, sorry. So I just wanted to clarify, because I think it's an important distinction when we're talking about this. And if we are not talking about an AI that needs to learn off of stuff that already exists, right? Then it's a different scenario, right?
yeah, I'm not saying that the AI situation with Zoom is analogous to what's happened with the writers. What I'm saying is the words AI now are triggering fear in people, and this
Yeah.
is a specific situation where that's happening.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because every single freaking website or app out there collects data,
Mm-hmm.
either actively or passively, and it uses it for certain business or operational reasons. Every app has what's called a privacy policy. You need to have a privacy policy in order to comply with federal laws and to have your app uploaded to the Google or Apple App Store. And in that privacy policy, it tells you what information does the app collect, how does it use that information, and how can people potentially opt out of having their information being used if they want to go ahead and use the app. And so from the dawn of apps are collecting information from people and using it for business, marketing, and operational purposes. And we seem to be okay with that. In this situation, I'm just saying tempers have seemed to flare, not because Zoom is collecting this information and using it for its own internal operational administrative tools, but because it's connected to an AI feature. And I think AI is kind of both a really cool tool, but also one that is bringing people's radars off of, oh no, you're using it to train models and computers without my particular permission. Where I think people have been fine with apps taking their data and using it for other reasons. For
Well,
many.
yeah, I mean, I think advertising as like probably the largest example, right? Most websites are taking your data and using it for advertising purposes. Most everyone is taking your data and using it for advertising purposes at this point, right? And I think, yes, as a society, we have sort of opted into the idea that, like, in exchange for what's the phrase? If you're not paying for the product, you are the product, right? Because if it's free, then someone's got to pay for it. And guess what? You are now, you're not consuming anymore. You are being consumed. So yeah, I think you're right. People do consent to a certain amount of data being taken on a certain level too, because we also have to be clear, learning my demographic, age, my gender, my name, these what websites I visit is very different from listening in on my entire conversation and watching my entire video and learning everything about my mannerisms, facial features, the way I speak, the way I talk, the way I move.
Yeah, I would say two things.
Terrifying. Yeah.
Right. One, that would be terrifying. Two,
Yeah.
it's not what's happening here. But I think it was the fear of what I think it was the fear of what people had, and I think it was due to Zoom not being transparent in what information they're collecting, how they're collecting it, and making that known to people. To me, this feels like very similar to the Cambridge Analytica Facebook conundrum that occurred during the election. If you recall, there was an app called Cambridge Analytica that was doing online surveys and telling people they were using it for research purposes. But really, it was a tool that was purchased by, I believe, a Republican candidate, Republican National Committee, some consulting
Yep.
company that was working with a political company, which is basically using this data to help craft messaging
Yep.
for political parties. And so it wasn't the fact that people clicked the data. It was, whoa, I thought this thing did one thing and you lied, you're using it for another. And I think here,
Correct.
this isn't a situation of Zoom lying. This is a situation of Zoom making an update to an app that was buried deep within the terms and conditions of the app that didn't
Yes.
transparently and properly explain to people what this app was going to be doing. And as a result of it, people got afraid of the fear of AI and say, you're listening to everything that I'm doing. You're taking my HIPAA data. You're taking attorney-client privilege information. You're taking my look and feel and how my mannerisms are, and you're going to use that to train robots.
Mm-hmm.
Really, what I think the situation was is Zoom said, look, we're trying out a new AI feature. If you opt into this AI feature, you have to agree to allow us to collect certain data. And we're going to use that data to help to create things like meeting summaries, transcripts, helping to create the gist of your meeting and kind of spit it back to you to have these helpful and useful notes. This, I think, could all have been avoided if Zoom said, hey, we're updating our terms and conditions. And as part of it, we're going to use certain data if you expressly opt in to help train our AI models, which will help you by doing the following, creating meeting summaries, etc. To be clear, we're not listening to your conversations actively. We're not collecting any of your video or audio. This is not being done. You don't have to accept this tool by default. But they didn't do that. Instead, it came out in the news that someone saw the update on the terms and conditions, dug in and said, whoa, what is that hiding down there? what is Zoom doing? They're an evil enterprise and all of our data is going to be stolen. We're going to leave Zoom. And it resulted in this big reputational risk that Zoom had to come out and say, whoa, 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 hey, sorry, it's not what we're doing. Sorry, this is being misconstrued. We're going to go ahead and fix it. But they had to be reactive rather than proactive. And as you said, a lot of damage has been done to Zoom's reputation as a result of it. And it might be something that's repairable or irreparable, time will tell, but could have been clearly avoided by being more transparent when they updated their terms of service.
So, do you think that the opt-in of it all solves the problem entirely?
It depends. It depends upon operationally how it's done. So I use a different tool than Zoom. Like I use Zoom when people send me a Zoom link, but I have another service. It's called Dialpad. It's like a Zoom competitor. I've been using them for years and they're dope. No, this isn't a sponsored post.
No, but if they want to,
yes, and boatloads of money. But I like the tool. It's easy to use. And in knowing that we were going to discuss this today, I was like, wait, am I having data collected through my AI tools on my different platform? And I saw, hey, there's an AI tool. I looked in the privacy policy and it says if you use the AI tool, then you can we're going to collect certain information to help us train the tool, similar to what's going on with Zoom. And so for me as a consumer and also a lawyer, I think that I want two things to happen. They're both the same. I want there to be transparency and that if I turn this tool on and I have to agree to the terms, I want it to be clear about what it is that you're doing. And so I think that it's one thing if Zoom changed their terms of service and just started collecting this data from people without having people actively accept that feature and the result and consequences of what it was going to be to use that feature, such as training their AI tool. And it's a different thing if you have to manually go ahead and accept it, which my understanding of reading through the situation is that's what it is. But
I mean, it is. I think there are, okay, if you're my boss and you decide to hold a meeting and you opt in to using these AI tools, right? Now, I need to be at that meeting, but I don't want my data collected and I don't want to be part of any call that's already been opted in. So where does that put me? And if now my data is collected because I attended this meeting, where does that put Zoom later on if I decide, hey, I didn't consent to that? Like I had to be at this meeting for work.
yes, that's actually a real shitty situation for you because, at least in my understanding as of recording the podcast today, the opt in for shared meetings is done by the administrator only.
Right.
I mean, the administrator chooses whether to opt in or opt out, and the participants themselves on the call don't have the ability to accept or modify that. So I think that that's a really poor model of how this is going to work, depending upon how it's executed. So let me talk to you about Dialpad service that I use. And again, this isn't a war between Dialpad and Zoom. I don't care, but I can record my meetings in Dialpad.
Sure.
I can record the audio and it can spit out an AI generated transcript, which is great because I use another tool called Rev, who's awesome. I send my videos to them for $1 a minute. They transcribe it. This could potentially save me some money. But when I go to record a meeting, I press a button and this robot lady says, "This meeting is recorded." And so it puts everybody on notice so that if someone objects to it, they could say, whoa, wait a minute, hold on, what's going on here? And it would be certainly a poor practice on my behalf to just hit the button without letting people know. If I'm going to be recording something, I'm going to say, hey, do you mind if I record this meeting? I say that one, because it's polite, but two, there are federal laws that prohibit me from recording other people's communications without their notice, especially if it's going to be something that is perceived to be a private conversation.
Right,
And
like this one.
Like this one.
Right. Totally private.
So, yeah. So I think the tool does that. It tells you this is being recorded because it's required to under the law. And so I don't know, sitting here today, how Zoom's tool works. Does it notify everybody, hey, you're being recorded and this is being used for AI purposes or not? But that could certainly be a concern if that is not happening. And I can see the situation that you're talking about where unwilling participants in the meeting don't know that they're being recorded and that their information is being used in some way, even if they accepted Zoom's terms and conditions by downloading the platform and joining the meeting.
Yeah, or literally in a situation where they're like, well, I have to attend this meeting or I'm going to lose my job. And the boss and Zoom have let me know that this meeting is using AI and my AI is my, data is going to be collected. But I don't want that. So now what do I do? You know?
Yeah, I mean that's a personal, practical situation, a little bit in a way. It's certainly one we get into this all the time between like what's right legally and what's like unfair for people, and sometimes that's a different question between legality and morality. From a legal perspective,
Yeah.
um,
Does a
if
person have a right to opt out of this from even in a request of a meeting, for example? Like, for example, like your recording example.
I mean, yeah, you're asking me a question I don't know the answer to, so we could delve into that if you want. But what I was going to say is that from a legal perspective, um, Zoom has the ability to have this tool if it's written in their terms and conditions. But once they made an update to the terms and conditions, they should have clearly and conspicuously disclosed what the material updates were. Fixing a typo is not material. Collecting data for AI machine learning is pretty material. So should have let people know about
Yeah.
these things. And that's all Zoom users, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to receive that email from Zoom saying, hey, we updated our terms of service and continued use of our app means acceptance of these new terms. And if people didn't click on it, like that employee in that particular circumstance, kind of it's on the employee, but really what it sounds like Zoom didn't do and they should have done is when they made that email update saying, here's the summary of the major changes to the rules. And here's our privacy policy with any opt-out procedures. Because it sounds like there are procedures for people to be able to opt out of this. But again, it certainly wasn't made clear at the time that this was done. And that's why this is creating a big reputational moral dilemma to people.
Yeah. I mean, I think that sums it up pretty nicely. Is there anything else you want to add? Do you think
Well,
it? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, really, the purpose of this, again, it's not to shit on Zoom, although I don't think that they made all the right moves here and they're having to
Yeah.
kind of backtrack and deal with it. What does this mean for you? This means if you're a business, if you are a website, if you are an app, we use these situations as learning lessons for the future. So, what should you learn? If you have a website or an app, you have to have terms and conditions and you have to have a privacy policy. These things are not just legal fine print on the bottom. They're very important. They're the contract between you and other users, and they are the terms to comply with various federal privacy laws. So you have to have terms and conditions that accurately disclose these types of things. And two, if you update your terms and conditions, you need to let people know that you updated them. And it's certainly a good best practice to summarize what those key updates are. Or else you might find yourself in a situation like this one where it feels like your privacy rights have been zoomed right off of you. And and you're caught like in a situation of a surprise, and now you're going to lose subscribers, you're going to lose business, you're going to have negative publicity, and you're going to have to distract yourself from doing whatever it is that you're doing in business to apologize and make changes and backtrack. And we say in the law, once the bell is rung, it can't be unrung, meaning there are vibrations from this that are going to create consequences that certainly could have been avoided through transparency. So just
Ethan,
learn from this lesson and use it in the future.
Ethan, if I wanted terms and conditions for my website, for my business, who would I turn to?
Yes. It's certainly not the purpose of this podcast, but yes, at the social media law firm, we draft terms and conditions for websites and app all the time. Yes.
Oh, what? That's crazy.
Not
Listen,
only do we read them, we write them. But
that's not.
that's
I don't even work for the social media law firm. I'm just a client. No, wait, what is it? I'm not. Not only am I a client, I also own the company. No, anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, yes, this is a thing that whether you go to Ethan's law firm or a law firm that specializes in this, it is important, to Ethan's point, to probably important, I would say, to have a lawyer look at your terms and conditions. Because I've had friends that have made websites that copy pasted terms and conditions from other websites into theirs, and like, well, fine. But I think if you're like serious and about protecting, your business and your website, like you probably got to do it right. Yes.
Yeah, that's like, yes, because it's a few reasons. You copy somebody else, it's copyright infringement. You're probably not going to get sued for that. But what's really the problem is if there is a problem down the line and you try to enforce your contract and it doesn't have terms to protect you, you're SOL. And that's really the issue. It's like an insurance policy. Sometimes we get really low cost car insurance because we don't want to pay a lot of money. And then we get into an accident and realize we don't have coverage that's going to protect us, and we have to come out of pocket a whole bunch of money. And it's the same thing with these terms and conditions. We think we could just copy these things online, use them on our website. It was enough to get onto the App Store. Great. But then there's a problem. And then you look at the terms and you realize these things aren't protecting me because they weren't reviewed by an attorney or drafted by an attorney, or more particularly, they weren't tailored to our business. And now you're really stuck and you think to yourself, man, I saved a few bucks on the front end, but this is a disaster on the back end. It's very similar to kind of an insurance situation. So you obviously don't want to spend, millions of dollars on lawyers when you're a startup at the outset to draft like the perfect legal treatise, but you also have to be smart and weigh your risk and reward. And I think having at least basic terms and conditions that are tailored to your business is worth that investment, kind of like an insurance, a properly curated insurance policy, just so that you can avoid the big damages that happen later.
Awesome. Well, listen, I think that this experiment in a new format of this podcast was a stunning success. We brought this in at a sweet 26 minutes. However, this is my first day on the job, so I have no idea what kind of plugs you have to do or things you have to say at the end of your podcast to wrap it all up. So I'm going to throw it back to you.
Like, subscribe, follow, do all the things. This is like the time of the podcast where you're probably not listening anymore anyway, which is cool. But if you like what we're doing, subscribe. If you want more legal tips as it relates to social media and the law, follow us on the Social Media Law Firm on, you guessed it, social media, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm not really on X or Twitter. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. If you got questions, let me know. If you agree, awesome. Tell me we're great. Tell me Sean's great. If you don't agree, let me know in the comments and we'll get into a heated discussion about it. And you'll probably win the argument, but it'll help with the algorithm. So
yeah.
Go now.
And if you call for my firing, I will find you. So. And my lawyer was here when I said it, so it's perfectly legal for me to threaten you like that. All right. Good night.